Hello!
Hello!
Welcome back to one of our episodes. I believe this is
15.
episode 15.
Mhm.
15. It's so exciting. If we sound a little different, it is because we are recording virtually for the first time ever, and so we hope it all works out. This will be kind of our test run.
Woo.
Anyway, welcome to Me, Myself, and I, an official confession stand podcast. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Hannah/Spuds.
I'm Sam Swags.
And I am Sarah Carbs. I was just thinking, how are we going to signal who goes next?
We made it work.
I winked and no one was here.
Oh, what are we going to be talking about today?
We are on book 4 of the A Court of Thorn and Roses series, A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. We'll be talking about chapters 1 through the end of 12.
Whoop whoop! Can't wait to get sad as fuck.
Oh my god.
Where we left off, the last episode was about Frost and Starlight, and it was a feel-good Christmas episode, and all of that goodness, just forget about it, because we're about to take you to the dark depths of depression. And we start off this series with not even chapter 1. It's before the book even starts. We have Nesta's point of view, and she's reliving being in the cauldron. How did you guys feel about that? Were you expecting that to be the first chapter? Or not even chapter, were you expecting that to be the intro to this book?
No, but I think it's important to truly see it from Nesta and or Elaine's perspective. 'Cause this entire time, anytime the trauma of the cauldron, I called it the cauldron dunking earlier, is being told, it's always from someone else's point of view. So I think it's pretty heavy to get a firsthand account of essentially commentary, a comparison to assault.
Honestly, I didn't even think about it that way, that we've never actually heard it from Nesta's point of view, going into the actual cauldron.
Well, and I think that there's two things, whereas Nesta seemed fine in Akawar because Elaine was a mess, so she sort of had to push all of that down, I think. So I certainly assumed that Nesta wasn't affected by it, because the next time we see Nesta is she's just being Nesta, and Elaine's the one that's going through the trauma response. And then I think the second thing about this is it reminded me a lot of Mist and Fury, and how that book opens up with Feyre having this horrible nightmare and remembering killing the Fae in the under the mountain.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of parallels with that.
You know, it's so interesting. So, as you were just talking about how we thought Elaine, we could physically see that she was going through it and really depressed. I just realized you couldn't tell that Nesta was depressed because Nesta's personality on the outside was always just bitchy. And she just was more bitchy than usual. So people didn't perceive her as struggling. That's so interesting.
And it made sense that she was more bitchy than usual, because she just turned Fae, which is the one thing she super duper hates. So we were kind of anticipating she was going to be slightly extra bitchy than her normal dose of Nesta. So
yeah, but I guess what I was getting at is, like, she didn't really seem very different on the outward side of it from a third person point of view. You're just kind of like, oh, that's just Nesta.
Well, and I think comparing Feyre and Nesta is really valid too, just because I think that's why Nesta and Feyre butt heads so much, is that because they are so similar, down to like their physical features. They've got the gray eyes, they have the same pretty much face, especially when you look at fan art too. Elaine is the standout of the three of them. So for them to have similar stories and not being able to communicate their traumas to each other kind of tracks for the two of them too.
I have a question for you guys. So you just made me think of something, Sam. Feyre doesn't really, I mean, we kind of see how her depression affects her in Mist and Fury, but I feel like it hinges more on her, like, Claire Better and killing those Fae, and she doesn't really grieve her old mortal self. And we know that now that she was always meant to be Rhys-An's mate, whereas Nesta, she doesn't have that same experience as Feyre. I wonder if because Feyre was destined to be a Fae, she never really went through this similar trauma that Nesta and Elaine did, where they completely changed like that. Or do you just think that her murdering the Fae was enough trauma to deal with?
I would argue that Nesta's kind of an in-between Feyre and Elaine, where Feyre never really found her place in the human realm, when Elaine is the very opposite. Nesta, it was kind of alluded to, I feel like, in the first or second books, that she was always going to have her own destiny, that she was going to stay specifically in her little town or in their country of the human realm, because there's other places humans can travel.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of implied. So she also didn't really know where her place was. I don't think she ever wanted it to be amongst the Fae.
Well, and do you think that Feyre, she didn't really have time to grieve because she just kind of went from one thing to another?
Mm-hmm.
She was just so busy.
She was also so young.
Oh my gosh, I forget how young she is.
Yep.
What is she, like 20 years old right now?
No, 21. She turned 21 on Frost and Starlight.
And actually, Cassian says 21 in one of the chapters in this book, because he talks about how he forgets constantly how young she is, and how at 21 he was just getting trashed and brawling, and she's already saved an entire country and found a mate and got married. Like, and went through a war.
Do we know how old Elaine and Nesta are? Is that ever said in the books? I don't think it is.
I believe it's implied that Nesta's like 25 or 26, so then Elaine is like 23.
Mm-hmm, maybe 24.
Oh my gosh. Little babies. They're so young.
Do you think... So one of the other things that Nesta talks about later in this book, and I'm sure we'll definitely have to put a trigger warning for this episode, we also know she was assaulted, and she was almost raped by the guy from the town she almost got married to.
Yeah, it was a suitor. Maybe
yeah,
a betrothed.
Well, and it was the guy that Feyre on her way out said, whatever you do, don't marry him.
And Nesta's stubborn ass went for it anyway, but that's fine.
Well, and she finally rejected him, and then he attacked her. I wonder if maybe some of this, because she describes going through the cauldron as an assault, and it does almost come off like a rape. And I would compare this to Alexander Pope's Rape of the Lock, which is a personification of rape, not necessarily an actual rape. But I wonder if there's some of that mixed in with her experience with the cauldron, because I do think that assault affected her, even though she wasn't, like, it didn't go all the way. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it obviously affected her with how she talks about it later on in the book, about how it was such a kind of traumatizing situation and an event that really made her feel... I mean, like, because with Nesta, you always think that she is just this independent... Well, I say independent, but she was, like, so lazy when it came to taking care of the family. But she just... She marches to the beat of her own drum. And she's just... It doesn't matter who you are, she treats you the same way. And that instance made her feel a little more inferior. Like, we'll talk about it later on this section. Her training in front of all of these masculine Illyrian warriors who already have a view of how women are and don't look highly on them, and she didn't want to be embarrassed in front of them. And I think that situation with Thomas probably put her in a situation where not only was it scary, but it kind of maybe hit her harder than most would think because of how her personality is. Well, let's get into the book. This is like all...
Yeah, because that's just the intro.
Yeah, that's not even chapter 1. That's just the prelim. So we start off in chapter 1. It's Cassian, and he is kind of suited up, ready to go to battle, and he's knocking on this decrepit door in this gross, janky apartment, and we find out that Nesta is on the other side of the door, and that is where she lives.
the battle is Nesta that he's preparing for her.
I thought that was so funny. I mean, sad for Nesta because she's clearly going through it, but that was really funny how even Cassian was so scared to go through the door.
It was like he lost a bet having to deal with her. He was not happy about having to drag her to Rhys and Feyre, that's for sure. Oh, and she also had a house guest.
Yeah, she did have a house guest, which is kind of funny because there's this constant sexual tension between Cassian and Nesta where they're definitely going to be enemies to lover. It's just how the setup is. That's what their chemistry is. And I'm so curious to know how he really felt about her having a guy there. And when she finally answered the door, she was in the guy's shirt.
Yeah, just in his shirt. My goodness.
And the guy's trying to jump out the window because he heard a man at the door.
And Cassian's like, you know, you could tell him not to jump out the window. I'm gonna because I forget how big of a not presence, but a big role Cassian just plays in the Valaris community.
But I mean, he's a huge mountain of a man.
Well, that, and he's like a huge warrior, like historically, but like he's kind of, it's almost like being a celebrity, I would assume. Because he's so close.
Oh yeah, because he's the High Lord's commander of the army. I didn't even think about that.
And best friend.
It's like squad
and best friend.
Right.
It's the one person in all of Valaris that you probably shouldn't have to go face to face with. I don't blame the guy for wanting to jump out of the window.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't either.
Yeah, so, and Nesta is clearly going through it. The last time that we saw Nesta, she detached herself from the family a little bit, but I guess we didn't know to the extent of how depressed she actually was. She is just drunk all the time. She's partying. She lives in the slums by choice. Feyre and Rhysand kind of give her money, and she still decides that instead of living close to her family, she would much rather prefer to be in a hellhole. She's one of those people, she has a mattress on the floor. I know we talk crap, like if we ever go into a guy's house and they have the mattress on the floor that we need to walk out.
No.
That's a Nesta.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, even so, I wouldn't date Nesta. She's a hot mess. Like, I mean, you know, poor kid, but I think the mattress on the floor is a good indicator of that. But the whole purpose of Cassian's presence there, actually, I believe she's at that apartment by choice, one, because it's cheap and affordable. So she doesn't have
to spend the rest of her money on booze.
On booze, yeah! And I guess experiences, I suppose. I could just see her, oh my gosh, I could just see her in the tavern, just being like, yeah, that's my sister, your high lady, drinks on her! That's my sister! Woo! What's up, fellas? You want to hook up with the sister of the high lady? That's this bitch, right now. Because my thought was, how would people know? And I'm like, oh, she told them. Yeah, she definitely told them.
Well, you gotta wonder how much people in Valaris know about the inner circle and who's connected to who and what people look like. Because I would assume they don't have social media or things like that, or newspapers that go out. There's the High Lord said this day. How would they know what people look like?
Yeah, that's a good, because I thought the same thing. Everything must be word of mouth, even with Feyre leaving Tamlin and the High Lord meeting and the war, all that must be some dude standing on an apple box going, hear ye, shit's going down.
Well, and even so, in the previous books with Feyre, when she was hiding and they were trying to get her from the Summer Court to the Night Court, or even when they had the experience in episode 7 that we talked about, where Rhys was injured with the ash arrows and they were trying to get back, but they couldn't winnow because that's how they were able to figure out where they were. But if they just stumbled upon someone on the street, would people even know what Feyre looked like?
I don't know. I would assume not. Maybe.
Is she on the coin yet? Like the queen or something? Maybe not. Is that not a thing there? I don't know. I
imagine them
money.
Maybe they sent out,
Honestly,
like,
I thought they just exchanged in, like, goods.
maybe they
Maybe
have
they probably
signed,
do.
maybe they, like, have signed curse breaker posters.
Smart.
Yeah, like
Just painted.
or oh my gosh, or like fan like their own fan fiction books. I mean, gosh, what's Nesta reads smut, which I think
Oh
is so
god,
fun.
what if she read a smut book and it was her sister?
It was her,
Oh.
her sister and Rhysand having like a 4-way with Tamlin and like Haley on.
No, oh my god.
But
I'd
it's
be
like,
scarred for life. I would never pick up another book.
but it's like Samlin and Belion or like Trayla.
Oh gosh. You gotta think that the people
me
of
sand.
Corinthian have a sense of humor.
I think so.
That's-
I think there's a lot of ways you could go about it for sure.
I also wonder if their perception of Rhysand and Feyre and all the other High Lords is how we view, like, the president or the queen and stuff. God rest her soul.
I don't know how I would feel about, because even before Feyre, all of like Rhysand's just sexual exploits as a citizen of Alaris. Like,
He was the Harry.
I'm just like, what are you doing aside from just screwing everything you see? Like, come on, man. Like,
Or like, how is he able to insulate his image to his town and his court versus the rest of the world?
He's a mind fixer thingy. He could just put the image into people's minds that he's amazing. I'm just saying.
That is so much work. Like, this man, for self-validation that he goes through, I could not.
No, he's got too much of a hero complex. He really does. Like, he wouldn't
I'm
even
sorry,
go through
have my recent feelings shown yet? I probably should have saved that for
Oh my gosh,
chapter
well,
2.
speaking of Rhysand feelings, when they finally get back to the River House, which is the new establishment that Rhys gifted Feyre, and it's finally built, it's her dream home. And this is where Cassian has been tasked with bringing Nesta. And Rhysand shows his colors in this little reunion.
This little intervention.
Oh my gosh. So it really is an intervention. Pretty much the goal of this quest is for them to get Nesta out of her depression, to stop drinking alcohol, and it's straight out of the show intervention. They want to rehab her, and Nesta, obviously, as an addict, is not here for it. She doesn't want to be part of this. And so they've been threatening to cut her off, and Feyre was like, it's all my fault because I fed into your problems.
Oh no, I'm so, I let you off. I thought I was doing the right thing. Oh, woo is me. Oh, like, fuck you. I'm sorry.
It's so stupid.
I mean, but
Well,
did Feyre also enable Nesta? 100%.
Well, she did and she didn't. So we have the intervention, and you're right, she does slightly enable it, but it's kind of funny how she's like, it's all my fault. It's like, no,
Oh, well, yeah.
Nesta is struggling right now, and yes, you enabled it, but like, you are not the cause of this chaos.
No, but I think that Feyre and Rhysand are just two sides of the same coin with their hero complex. Feyre couldn't save Nesta, and it's a reflection on her.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. And Nesta kind of gives Feyre shit back, and Rhys low-key loses it and is like, yo, you want to go to the backyard? We can duke this out, which is so redneck. So we were just getting into the intervention, and Feyre was kind of telling her that, like, she doesn't really have a choice. It's an intervention. It's an ultimatum. And Nesta gave her slack back, and Rhys decides to try and fight Nesta.
Yeah, so she tells Rhys to just, just to mind his damn business. And
it's a family matter.
The group that was there for the intervention is a little mismatched for what an intervention's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be the people that you trust, that have seen the most sides of you. So Rhys and Cassian being there doesn't really make sense to begin with, other than obviously Rhys to support Feyre, but then he should have been the silent partner in that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But Amryn not being there despite their fight, and Elaine not being there, she's kind of surrounded. She's surrounded by sharks, essentially.
But Amryn is there.
Oh, duh. Amryn is there, but they have their fault.
But Elaine isn't, yeah.
Elaine isn't there, yes. Mora also wasn't there, but that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's who it was.
Yeah. It was just a weird setup.
Yeah.
It honestly should have just been Feyre and Elaine, to be perfectly honest. Even with
I think so
Amren,
too.
like, despite their fight, had they not fought, she would be there, but I think it should have just been the sisters.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I don't think it would have gone amazing, but I think that would have been the... I don't think Nesta would have felt so ganged up on, and so... What's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say attacked.
I mean, she was.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
That's how interventions go, though.
Stupid ass Reese. Oh my god, I cannot believe him. He's like, oh, we got plenty of space outside to just duke it out. Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh, I can't even believe she's gonna have his babies. Like, I would abort right there and then. Like, how dare he? Oh my gosh.
Honestly, if I were Feyre, I would be pissed. I'd be like, you need to watch your fucking tone. And I think she even says to him, she's like, like, this is not your spot to talk, or you need to be quiet. You were just supposed to be here.
You said you wanted to be here, which says a lot about Reese, because he does not need to be there. He specifically went to see Nesta get, I guess, dug in, or what's the word I'm looking for?
Humbled.
Yeah, like, he was there to witness Nesta being put in her place, and that's why
You know what it is? Reese, he loves the drama. He is such a showman.
Mm-hmm. Totally. 100%.
So it's interesting that Cassian was the one to show up to get Nesta and not Amren, because Amren's kind of been Nesta's friend. And we come to find out that they have now also had a falling out, and Nesta doesn't really have any ally on the inner circle anymore.
Yeah, that was like her last tether. That was like her only true connection to the inner circle at that point.
And can you tell us a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, all we know about what went down was that it was an end of the summer kind of festival with the inner circle, and somehow Nesta walked off, storming off, and Amren and Nesta have not spoken since.
That makes me so sad. I loved their friendship.
I know.
I know how you feel about Amren, but I don't know. Their friendship was so interesting to me.
Yeah, their friendship was fine. It doesn't mean I have to like Amren.
Well, and then Amren was the one who, like, dealt out the conditions of the intervention. It's like, you're not even talking to Nesta right now. Why are you the one saying these things?
So fucking cowardly. Because it should have been Feyre, and Feyre does this whole, like, oh, woe is me, I gave you too much space, and that's my fault, and what's happening to you is all on me, and I need to take responsibility for it. And then Nessa's like, screw you, and Amber's like, no, screw you, we're doing this, and and that was the plan originally, is that Feyre was going to, like, do the soft blow, and then Amren was going to deliver the terms of the agreement. And
good cop, bad cop.
Yeah, good cop, bad cop. And the agreement, or the conditions of this situation, is Nesta is going to live in the House of Wind, and that's that big home in the top of on the top of the mountain in Valaris, and she's going to live there, train with Cassian in the morning, and then work in the library below the House of Wind in the evenings with Clotho. And
do you guys not find it super funny that, so, like, they didn't even want to live in the House of Wind because it's not very homely, but they put Nesta there, and they want an intervention, but they don't want her close to them.
Right. Well, and that's why this feels like rehab so much, because this isn't even a home. This is a facility. And it's just, like, out of sight, out of mind. And I think that's what I was really bothered by this conversation, because Nesta does eventually just sit and talk with Feyre. She's like, no, I just want to talk to Feyre, everyone get out. And eventually Feyre's like, you're an embarrassment. Like, I had to pay this huge ass bill because of you, and I'm the high lady. It reflects poorly on me. Elaine is not there because Elaine is cleaning out Nesta's apartment as they're talking. And Nesta can never go back to that apartment because Feyre is demolishing that entire building to build a shelter for the people who, like, need homes from that great battle that took place. And that's just, like, stab and twist. Because she doesn't need to demolish that building. That's her taking this thing that's sacred to Nesta and destroying it.
Yeah, it's definitely her safe space. And it's funny because throughout us talking about this, it just makes me feel like none of this is actually about Nesta. It's about embarrassing the High Lord and the High Lady. They they don't want her close enough to deal with it themselves, but they're like, "Oh, it's all our fault. So we're going to put you up way over there so that you can't cause havoc for our image anymore." Like none of this feels like it's actual care for Nesta.
And we're not going to rehab you. We're going to put my army general of 500 years to babysit your ass.
Well, and Curbs made a really interesting comment a while back, like not on any of our podcasts, but she was like, Nesta and Cassian have this romantic connection somewhat. Like they have this tension.
Yeah.
And like, isn't that super inconsiderate to put him in charge of rehabbing her? What did you say about that, Carbs? You had said something very profound.
I said that this is Feyre's way of sticking her nose into this because I think it is insensitive to have Cassian train Nesta because of their history. Like, to sort of, like, because she knows, I think inherently she knows, oh, if Cassian and Nesta just are in the same place like before, like, I'm going to create the same conditions as ACOSF, when they started to come together. It's going to be in the same house, and they're going to, like, fall for each other again. And it's just...
And this will fix her.
And then Cassian will be happy, because he obviously loves Ness, and he's miserable that she hates him, right? Or she treats him like she hates him right now. I think the healthier option would have been to have Azriel train her instead, who's sort of like, or maybe Moore, but Moore doesn't really like Nesta. But I feel like Azriel's enough of like a sidestep where that kind of makes sense. But this feels very much like Feyre trying to, one, get control over Nesta and sort of help a best friend out. Like, this is more her helping out Cassian to court her instead of Nesta really getting the help she needs. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, but Sarah J. Maas and her writing of convenience has the perfect excuse that Azriel's just too busy with those meddlesome mortal queens. Like, he doesn't have time for Nesta, but you, Cassian, you have nothing better to do. The war is not, like, creeping on our doorsteps or anything.
The general of the army has nothing better to do.
No, never.
Well, and then they threaten her that if she doesn't accept those conditions, they're going to send her back to the human realm.
But why doesn't Rhysand train her? Like, and then bond as, like, brother and sister.
Because he's too busy fucking Feyre at the most inappropriate times.
One of the big things that really irritates me about this whole thing, and I'm going to get to this in just a second, but I wanted to say one more thing about Nesta. So I feel like one of the reasons why Rhysand does not like Nesta, and why that sort of trickles down to the rest of the inner circle, is because she chooses not to hang out with them. She opts not to be part of the inner circle. She doesn't say thank you. Like, she's spending all their money on drinks, and yet she shows no, like, oh my god, Rhysand, you're such an amazing like leader of the Night Court. Like, she is...
I'm so grateful for you.
Yeah! Like, she shows no gratitude. She doesn't smile and say thank you. She feels that she earns this, or, like, she's deserved it, because she wouldn't be in this mess had Feyre not, like, fallen for the High Lord, and then they got their sisters involved with the queens, and then Hybern kidnapped them. She's like, nah, this is payment due. So,
yeah,
I feel like this is another reason why Rhysand is so tough on Nesta's, because she doesn't like him, and he just has that hero complex where he's like, everyone likes me, but yeah,
unless I tell them not to like me, because it's a facade. She takes away the control that he has over everybody else.
Right, absolutely.
I will say, though, just playing devil's advocate, because I agree for the most part about everything we're saying, I do think that she needed an intervention.
Yeah, I agree.
I know that we've talked in the past that, like, oh, it's too soon, but there's something I still think when you compare Nesta to Elaine's working through their traumas, there was something not only damaging to their image, which should be the least of their concerns, but clearly is a bigger concern for Feyre and Rhysand, but I think that the outward use of a coping skill would have been much more detrimental to Nesta quicker and in the long run than what Elaine was doing.
Yeah.
That's just me stirring the pot. But overall, like, they did not set it up well. Rhysand was a dick. Feyre needs to get her head out of her ass. Like, all of that is still valid.
It just seems like, I mean, obviously they clearly don't know her. Like, they don't know Nesta
Yeah.
really well enough to know what they were supposed to do. And, like, I grant them, like, yes, obviously she needs an intervention, and I'm happy that they're doing that because clearly she's not doing well. But it's just, I don't know, there wasn't much thought into
No.
what would actually be better for her.
No,
And I
and
think
that
they just kind of
shows...
went this tough love approach, whereas they would never do that to Elaine.
No, and I think it shows in, I feel like that night, the night before, was the final straw. That this is something that was discussed, never put into play, and it feels like this was a snap decision made by the inner circle to do it, and that's why it was so poorly executed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or there's like, we have to do this, snap, snap, done.
I mean, yes, it was a necessary action that needed to take place because, I mean, Nesta was destroying herself. Like, she wasn't taking care of herself. She obviously was not dealing with her trauma appropriately. But they just didn't put, when they were deciding what would be best for Nesta, they certainly didn't think about what Nesta would want. They thought about what would be better for them, I think.
I was thinking about how when Feyre was going through her trauma and she was super sick when she was with Tamlin and how Tamlin was treating her, it's almost as if Nesta's both of the characters. Nesta's the Tamlin and she's the Feyre.
Mm-hmm.
She's the one doing it to herself.
Mm-hmm.
Which is just sad.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad all around. But without further ado, she ends up at the House of Wind, and boy does she hate it. So some of the things about the House of Wind, all of the inner circle and everyone around her has been directed to not transport her back and forth from the city, and the only way for her to leave the House of Wind is to do the 10,000 steps down the House of Wind into the city, and the house will no longer give her alcohol, so when she's around, if she wants alcohol, it's not possible.
She would have to go get it herself, is the catch.
Yeah, those 10,000 steps. I don't know how I would feel about that. I would go crazy.
You know, I thought it wasn't going to be so bad. Like, in my mind, I'm not thinking about the altitude sickness of it. Because I'm also like, they're Fae. Like, how is going down 10,000 steps going to really affect them? But it does.
I mean, honestly, even the descriptions that Sarah J. Maas has in the books of Nesta's attempts, I was already getting nauseous just hearing her go down and spiral and spiral. I'm like, ugh, you're right.
Well, and I didn't realize it was like a spiral staircase type deal, because yeah, that would make me so sick. Oh my god.
Well, and you have to remember, even though she's Fae right now, she's a new Fae, so she doesn't understand her body really, and she's also been abusing it, and she is extremely weak right now. When she does finally start training, she is the most out of shape you could ever get.
I mean, Cassian even notes that she's very thin when he sees her.
Well, and she probably wasn't fit. I mean, she was healthier by the time she was turned, but I mean, she had those, like, what, a decade of malnutrition, malnourishment.
She wasn't exactly the one to go work out either.
Right, and then on top of that, so sure, she might have been finally eating regularly again, but she had no reason to work out. Then the trauma happened. So, I mean, she has been, like, truly underfed for almost 2 decades of her life at this rate, if we're looking at the bigger picture of it all.
Yeah.
Ugh, tough break.
Well, and we find out that, like, through all of this process, her being in the House of Wind, I feel like it's going to be very lonely there, because the only other person there is Cassian and Azriel, but Azriel's gone all the time dealing with the queens.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I don't know how putting her in a desolate House of Wind is going to be much different from the desolate apartment.
Well, and I'm shocked that Elaine didn't, or I mean, I guess I don't really know what happened, but Elaine, you know, Nesta was there for Elaine's breakdown, and yet Elaine does not opt to stay in the House of Wind with her. I mean,
that is really weird.
Maybe Elaine's too much of a crutch, and that's why, like, they didn't want her there, but I found that odd that Elaine was not there, even just part-time, like, just to come over for dinners, or
or to be there.
Yeah.
It is weird that Elaine has like no loyalty to Nesta, even though Nesta's based her whole life on protecting Elaine.
On Elaine. Yeah.
There's no sympathy for that. She's almost been brainwashed or something. But it just goes to show that like as much as Nesta tried to protect her, Elaine didn't really care, which is even more sad. It's just like this whole intervention thing was just one low blow after another. It was like every time they hit below the belt, they're like, I bet I can hit your kneecap. All right, let's go for your chin now.
All right, we're going for the toes.
I gotta go. Oh.
And Feyre did tell Nesta that Elaine will come visit you if she wants to. So she knows, she knows, yeah, she knows where you are. She'll come up to see you when she wants to.
Which is even more of a low blow because she never comes to visit. I mean, she does later on in the book.
She sees her one time, and while she's up there, and yeah, it's not, yeah, it doesn't go very well. Well, Nesta's sort of dishing this out with Feyre. Cassian goes talks to Rhysand in another room, and they discuss how Cassian's role is going to start changing in this book. Well, I guess in this phase of his life. So not only does he have his general duties, but he's taking on courtier responsibilities, because Lucian is not, he's a little too biased when it comes to relations with the human people because of his position right now. And we know at the end of Frost and Starlight, he's decided to start living with Jurian and Vassa in their little clubhouse in the what is it?
The Band of Exiles.
The Band of Exiles. And he still has ties with Tamlin as well.
I love it though. He's finally found his group.
I love that for him.
Because everyone hates on Lucian.
I'm excited for him. I'm excited to see what he does. Like, I'm excited for him to get some chicks, or I don't know. Like, I just want him to have some good times. That's all.
Yeah, clearly his mate doesn't give a shit about him.
I was going to say, speaking of people not doing well in this book, Lucian is on that list for me.
I know. He has it rough too. His own mate won't even recognize him. Do you guys think that she's going to turn down the mating bond?
I think so.
It's weird because I feel like Lucian and Nesta are in very similar positions.
Nobody likes them.
Well, also they are having a lack of relationship with Elaine, so there's that. But
spoiler alert, or like plot twist, Nesta and Lucian end up together.
But they both lost their best friends. Like, Nesta's no longer friends with Amryn. We don't know why yet, but they had this fight on a barge about a month ago. And Lucian is really not that close with Tamlin anymore. They had sort of a brawl and falling out. So they're both and they're in very similar spots where they're trying to redefine like their new place and their like new sense of self, I think, without like their external relationships to define them, I think.
Well, and you know, it's so interesting. They get so much shit for removing themselves from toxic situations, but no one actually wants to be around them anyway. It's like, I don't want you near me, but like, I want you to want to be near me.
Right. They're like cats. But yeah, Rhysand and Cassian have a discussion, and this is why I hate Rhysand. Like, I get so mad about this. Like, I'm just so mad about this because
tell us how you really feel.
I'm so mad. Like, I made that TikTok where I put him at the bottom of the list, and I did it really as a joke, but now
it wasn't a joke.
He's staying. He's not moving anywhere. He's staying put because, you know, Cassian calls him out for how he behaved with Nesta, like Trump supporting hillbilly, and and you know what, Rhysand? He's happy with himself because he knows that Feyre and him are gonna have hate sex or like angry sex with each other, because that's just, they just get mad at each other and then they just hate fuck. Like, and it makes me like that he is going to get rewarded for his poor behavior is why I'm so frustrated with him and Feyre right now, because she knows it too, and that's why he sent all the servants his way, because he's like, well, I'm not worried about them hearing us argue, wink wink, and like It's like, seriously, go fuck yourself on every single level. Level 1, level 2, level 3, level
Girl,
4.
you know they already have.
Oh my
I know.
gosh. I am like...
Come on, this is round 2 on every surface.
Like,
Uh,
it makes me so mad that he's gonna be, like, rewarded for his horrible behavior, and I am
Really, it's
very...
not that he's gonna be, I guess, in a twisted way, he's not being rewarded. Farah is being rewarded, but he's enjoying it. He's not alone. He's not missing
reaping
out
the
on the
benefits.
situation. Yeah.
I mean, like, it won't be her... I don't know, like, but if, like, but he enjoys giving her pleasure, so I'm just saying, like, it's not like he's going to be sleeping on the couch, I guess is what I was going for.
Farah would never, not
Mm-mm.
after she thought he died in the last book. That would never happen. There's no doghouse in that house.
I think she should be allowed to just stab him. He won't die. Just like one quick stab. Like
This isn't Poppy and Castile.
I would say Poppy and Cass, let's go.
Yeah, that is why I love their relationship, because if you could do that, like if you could get over each other by being able to stab it, I think that's fine. I think that's cool. I think that's healthy. I'm just saying, I wish Favorite would just stab him once. That's all. That would make me so much happier. But regardless, so
He could use that humbling. Not gonna lie. He could use that.
he could. He totally needs to be marked a peg.
You guys didn't know? Reese is the most humble guy in the whole book series.
Yeah, him and Mariah Carey.
Oh. I mean, to be fair, Mariah Carey probably did get humbled by all of Nick Cannon's new
Oh, I'm
children,
sure. No, that
so.
was tough for her.
If that's anything, Reese has got his day coming. Oh, don't even get me started on it. But anyway, yeah, so Cassian is now... Would you call him the courtier?
He's a courtier, because Lucian is still holding the title of emissary. So, you know, like a member of someone's court who's like checking in on people, being represented for Rhysand, you know, seeing what's what.
Well, and we should also kind of talk about, so things that are going on not Nesta related. There's a lot of stuff happening in the post-war world.
Yeah.
With the different courts and the human wall. And like part of the reason why a lot of people aren't there to help with the intervention is because Azriel's dealing with the human queens and being a spy. Moore's also looking into some things. So we find out that the Autumn Court is essentially just being the Autumn Court, and they want to take over Tamlin's land because he's just in his beast form. He's barely in his human form, and he's not taking care of anything. And the Autumn Court wants to take advantage of that. Sam, do you want to talk about the Valahan and kind of the stuff that goes along with that?
I'll have to pull that up in a second. Yeah, so on Cassian's first, one of his first tester roles that Rhys gives him is to check in with Lucian, who has been camping out with his band of exiles. So in doing so, he also happens to run into Eris. And this is where we learn all this information, that the reconstruction and rebuilding the walls and the peace treaties are just taking a long time. That even though they're on the other side of it, it's not a one and done type thing. So that's when they learn about the Autumn Court, and you find out that Tamlin is not in a great place, and then you get the impression that Lucian and Tamlin are in a good place the way that they used to be. And one of the Fae Islands, Valahan, was an ally that they're hoping to nab in this upcoming war with the Queens and with Kostjay, and trying to figure out what their plans are, if the Autumn King is swinging with that, and also if this other fairy realm is going to swing with Kostjay or with the rest of the Prithian courts. So this realm has a history of kind of playing both sides, whatever side happens to work for them, and they have no clue where their allegiance is right now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, in their history, they kind of go back and forth where they don't really have loyalty to anybody
but themselves. So, their theory from the little bit of talks that Azriel and them have been able to pick up on is that they're like, why are we going to work towards peace if another war is right around the corner? So that kind of leaves them in a really awkward predicament that they are either going to side with the enemy or just not participate at all. And also, Lucian was not overly showing his hand about Tamlin, and Cassian makes the note when talking to Lucian that only Lucian is giving this information directly to Rhysand. So no one else in the inner circle knows what's happening with Tamlin besides those two.
What an interesting tactic. Why do you think he's doing that?
Because I think maybe Rhysand has a shred of guilt for what he and Feyre did to literally take down the Spring Court before they realized that they needed him. LOL. They have a conscience? Never.
Whoops.
But I think whether they have a conscience about the decimation of the Spring Court or not, he realizes, the Spring Court is the court that separates the Fey realm from the human realm. Like, that is such a critical, up for grabs piece of land, and it's going to turn the tide of the war immediately.
Oh, yeah. Especially if, Valahan wants to use that as a battleground, or the Autumn Court wants to take it over. That is lucrative land, even though I know that it's kind of, everyone's abandoned it there, but that just makes it kind of like an easy playing field to take up.
Yeah, so we will see. Oh, and then we learn a little bit more about Vasa and her captivity and how she was able to stay away from her master a little bit longer, but her curse is still active on her. So she's only human in the evenings. She is Firebird during the day still, but she is not required to be on the island with the person that cursed her.
So with Vasa, I hope you guys can kind of explain this to me. This is something that I was always a little confused about. Did we always know that she was kind of owned as a slave to somebody or cursed by somebody and became the Firebird and stuff? Or is that with this newest book?
She wasn't always. I think it was in ACOWAR that I feel like Vasa didn't want to join Hybern. And because of this, the other queens turned against her and sold her to Kostja. Or sold her, or traded her, or whatever. Because I feel like she was there for the queen meetings, or was she not there for the queen meeting?
I'm pulling up her history. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah.
Vasa, in A Court of Mist and Fury, Vasa is absent from the meetings between the 5 remaining mortal queens for their meetings at the Archeron home, negotiating the Book of Breathings. The queens lie, saying that she is unwell and thus unable to make the journey to attend. However, the other queen, Demetra, is the one that leaves the note saying that Vasa is not ill but couldn't say more. So she is the odd one out.
Got it. And she was the one that was impaled, right?
I thought she was the one who was impaled.
And then in Wings and Ruin, Elaine is the one that is able to see what happened to Vasa through one of her visions. She sees Vasa and other women kept captive by a, quote, sorcerer at a lake within the contents, hidden amongst the mountains and ancient forests. She says other women have feathers and snow and glide across the water while Vasa rages through the skies above the lake. Her curse causes her to turn to a firebird during the day and return to human at night. Then that's when Daddy Archeron comes in and bargains for her freedom.
He kind of saves her.
Yeah.
Well, to an extent, she's still stuck as a firebird.
Could be worse.
And then, yeah, back to Silver Flame where we're at.
So when she was banished from the queens, she was given to this creepy sorcerer in the lake.
So where we're at in this recap is Eris, which is the reason why he was poking around with the bands of exiles. He lost a handful of his top soldiers that he thinks were possibly bewitched by possibly Vasa's sorcerer, because they went off searching for something and they just never showed up, and they just didn't match what the soldiers do. And Vasa puts a name to it, saying that it could be the Queen Briellen that would be capable of performing such magic.
And Briellen, just a reminder, Briellen is the youngest queen that went to the cauldron first after Nesta and Elaine, and was cursed to look like an old crone. So she is immortal, like a fae, but she looks like a really old lady. And this is because the
Karma's
cauldron
a
was
bitch.
yeah, this is because the cauldron was very mad that Nesta took power, like too much, like more power than she was supposed to from her interaction with it. So yeah, Brie Allen still has quite the bone to pick with Nesta in her mind, even though like Nesta, it's like it's like why are you mad at Nesta? She didn't even want to go in the cauldron, like.
So with that, essentially, just to sum it up, because we find out that Valahan is another Fae territory. We don't really know who they're going to side with based off of their history. And when we go to the Band of Exiles, Eris thinks that it is Brialyn, who is the youngest queen, who was turned into the oldest queen in the cauldron, that has worked with the sorcerer in the swamp, and the sorcerer is also named Kosjay, and we find out that it's the Bone Carver's brother. And he's the one who controls Vasa.
He talked about how he had in Aka War, he had a brother that was chained to a lake, or what's the word I'm looking for? Like, he can't leave from his premises. He's stuck where he's
Stoop
at.
kid never leaves his stoop.
That's perfect.
He's the death god.
He's the death god stoop
Did I just
kid.
show my age? I'm so embarrassed.
I loved it. It was quite the 90s flex, early 2000s flex.
Well, and throughout all of this, we find out that Baron, the High Lord of the Autumn Court, has sided with Kosjay and Brialyn, the youngest queen. So Baron has already kind of decided where his loyalties lie. And I feel like his loyalties will just lie wherever they aren't with Rhysand.
Right. Like, it almost annoys me how much of a stereotypical villain Baron is. Like, I could just see him twisting a mustache all the time. Like, he's just like, I'm gonna do the evil thing. That's my thing. I do the evil
Dr.
thing.
Evil.
You want me to do this? I'm gonna do the opposite. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly. You know what's? Oh, is this good for the entire country and all of my people? I'm gonna do the other thing. Like,
I think not.
It's
kind of funny though. Not gonna lie, he's an interesting character. He's an asshole, but his choices, I'm just like, that's so barren of him. We should use that as a term for like when one of us is having a bad day or something. But like, oh, she's being a baron.
She's being a total
B.
Being a total B.
Are you baroning today? I feel like baroning. Let's just wake up and choose violence.
I love that. That would be like a perfect status for him. I woke up like this, choosing violence. And then, yeah, so speaking of Eris, of Baron, and his son Eris, because Eris is trying to take over from his daddy, so Rhysand's gonna help Eris take the Autumn Court because he doesn't trust his dad, and this whole situation, or this whole interview with the Band of Exiles and Eris and Cassian sort of confirms for Eris his suspicions about this entire situation. So Cassian goes back to the House of Wind, and we start taking our lessons the next day. So it's training time, and he takes
barely lessons.
I know, it's not like Pharaoh where she had to write Rhysand as a sex god. Like,
well, yeah, Carves obviously, because Nesta knows how to read.
Yeah, exactly.
They really gave up at the end, didn't they? On those poor girls.
Yeah,
it's just like, your sisters know how to read. That's enough. You're good, right? You can get rabbits.
2 out of 3. That's a passing grade.
Yeah, you can hunt your way through the alphabet. It's all Gucci.
Well, you know what? If anything, Feyre taught us all that you don't need to learn how to read to become a princess.
Yeah. I'm not going to teach my kids to read. I want them to all be princesses. They're going to be
or you can take a page out of Camilla's book and just play the long game as the side chick and still become queen.
Oh, the shade.
Oh, the shade.
The shade. You'll have to listen to Stream with me to listen to that episode. Shameless plug. Anyway, so we start training, or lack thereof, and they don't do it at the House of Wind, which I find is so weird that they go all the way to the Illyrian training camp.
Well, I thought
I
he
know,
had
right?
stuff to do over there, so it's kind of like ticking 2 boxes, or like killing 2 birds with 1 stone,
Yeah.
right?
2 for 1.
Well,
Um,
yeah,
Buy 1,
because
get 1
there
free.
are what tends to happen after a war. Rhysand and Cassian have explained is that the war, like the fringe war bands and the groups that aren't in like the major camps, start kind of going a little AWOL and want to rebel. So they were starting to put out the what's the word? The dissent amongst some of those groups. So Cassie was kind of making the rounds, making sure everyone's okay, putting them in their place. And also, now that Reese is back for the first time in 50 years, they're back on working towards getting the female Illyrians properly trained in the armies. So they do have a lot of cleanup work that had been neglected over these years that they are working towards right now.
Do you guys find it funny that they just spent all of this time fighting this war for people who don't want to be part of them?
What, the Illyrians?
All of it. Like, Feyre and Rhysand, they fought this whole war to, like, save everybody, and then you see all this, like, the Illyrians don't want to be part of it, Autumn Court doesn't want to be part of it, humans don't want to be part of it, like, they all just kind of want to do their own thing.
I had that thought, honestly, when we were finishing it. I knew that things weren't going to be, like, perfect with a bow at the end of the 3rd book, but for how desolate these people were acting, and after the 50 years of trauma they went through with Amarantha, you think they'd be a little bit more motivated to not fall back into something similar.
Whereas they're just kind of like, oh, it's finally over, now we can go do our own thing, or, like, make new allies and stuff. It just seems so strange to me.
Nitpick and fuck around with each other because I don't like your face for whatever reason.
Do you think?
Yeah, and now I can say that.
Do you think it's just the damage is done and they just don't trust other, like, they're just scared, and that trauma and fear is just so embedded, they don't trust other courts, and they don't really trust the outcomes of things?
It's kind of like American politics where the fucking boomers don't know when to quit. These people have hundreds and hundreds of years of resentment, and they've all fucked each other over in one way or another.
Yeah.
So they have these hundreds of years of them having pulled one out on each other, and now they have to work together. Of course they don't want to, and they last forever.
But they all work together to win the war. That's so weird to me that it's like, okay, we did that, now we're not going to continue this.
Yeah, you'd think it would be a fresh enough perspective, almost dying, losing everything but what do I
These
know?
old heads.
Gosh, if that doesn't get you to change your mind, I don't know what will. Jeez.
Like, right? I don't get it.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so we end up training. What is the place called again?
Windhaven is one of the major Illyrian camps.
And this is, so when Nesta goes there, she is being the little bitch that she is, and Cassian's trying to train her, and she refuses. She just kind of sits on a rock and is like, no, I'm not going to do that, because she's witnessing all of these male Illyrian warriors just be so degrading to her and about women. They end up calling her a witch. They think she's a witch after coming out of the cauldron, and she, like, totally plays into it. What does she say?
Oh, they said, what are you doing here? And she said, witchcraft.
And it's feeding into, there's so much superstition still amongst the camps about women's roles in an army with weapons, all of that. So they're like, well, you can't touch the swords if you're on your period, and you can't do this, and you can't do that. And she's like, I'm a witch, you want to try me? And they all, like, freaked out on her.
Well, and what did Declan say? He went to Cassian and was like, everything she touches, you have to burn now.
You have to bury it. Yeah, you have to...
Oh, you have to bury it.
That was the superstition, yeah.
That's so funny. Men are so stupid.
It's like toxic masculinity to, like, the nth level.
It is funny how, like, they will, like, they're so masculine by clipping their females' wings because they don't see them as, like,
equal,
trainable or anything like that. And it's like, if you're so scared of women, why do you need to clip their wings if they're already the weaker race? And why are you worried about Nesta being a witch?
It's funny if you think about it, because they have, like, an extreme fear of cooties.
It's true.
It's like they had a cooties outbreak, like, at the beginning of time. A plague of cooties that just wiped out their entire fleet.
Oh, God.
Honestly, they need cooties to clear out some of those camps of that trash. Just saying.
I know, for real. Well, and we also find out that, like, while Cassian is there, he is also trying to make sure that the women are training, and none of the women are training because the men won't let them. Or they're training, like, at super off hours after they finish a certain day's worth of chores. It's so antiquated.
Well, and that's why, again, why Cassian doing this whole, like, rehab thing with Nesta is really frustrating. Like, he obviously has shit to do. Like, he's the only one who's really advocating for change, especially in these types of environments. And he can't even be there because Nesta's too busy dragging his balls up and down the fucking stairs. Like, I mean, it's really frustrating because I feel like Cassie is a really good guy for the most part. I think he's very consistent. And I think he genuinely wants, like, peace. I think he genuinely wants everyone to be happy, and he's a huge advocate for equality, but he's Rhysand's little errand boy sometimes, or most of the time, and it's preventing him from pursuing his passions, which, you know, we had talked about this in the last episode about Frost and Starlight, how Cassian's like that uncle who always sleeps on the couch. Like, you have a spare bedroom, but he just chooses to sleep on the couch. And he kind of has that vibe to him of not caring. And I feel like it comes from a place of sort of giving up a little bit because he's not really given the opportunities to pursue the things that he wants to do. And I feel like that's because of Rhysand.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
I think it's a combo. I think it's not necessary. I think Rhysand is the end effect of it all, but I think it's the centuries of being told how worthless he was because he was a bastard, that he was never going to amount to anything. And so him becoming the general, I mean, mostly because of his skill, but the final push of being Rhysand's best friend. I mean, that's no one else would have taken Cassian seriously.
Well, and, like, the thing is like, no one will mess with him now because, like, even at the general, no one can ever even come for his position because of his ties to Rhysand.
Well, and you can actually, the other point is, I guess Cassian has every right to turn Rhysand down. I mean, and he won't do it.
Because that's his best friend.
Because that's his best friend. And I think also Sam has a good point, because of this very low self-esteem and self-worth, he's just not going to advocate for what he wants and what he wants to do in general.
Well, like, it's funny because, like, what he wants is just whatever Rhysand wants him to do. Like, I genuinely think that he's happy doing that.
I disagree. I don't get that vibe from him. I feel like Cassian is one of those people who is very much go with the flow. But I think he has his own like passions and things he wants to pursue. He just isn't given, he wants people to give him he wants permission to do them, and he's waiting for that, but he never gets it. And I think that kind of makes him a little, I feel like because he's a general, like, he's so used to being given commands, like, he's so used to having direction and structure. So when it comes to the things he wants to do, he wants permission to do those things. And Rhysand won't give it to him, or will anyone will. And I get that feeling from him, and I can't explain, of this, like, defeated nature of him, like, personality-wise.
Yeah, he's like it's a high-functioning depression almost, where everything looks good, he's at the peak of his career, he would not want to be doing anything else with his life. But he reached the peak, and he's like, I'm good. I don't need to do anything else. Like, this is it for me.
Yeah, what more can I possibly do?
Right. I've done everything that's been in my wheelhouse, that's been given to me, that I'm feel comfortable and I'm capable of doing.
But he's obviously not fulfilled. Like, his life isn't fulfilling him in any aspect. Like, he's content but not happy.
Or you could say he's not fulfilling something.
Oh, stop it.
You couldn't help
Okay,
it.
good segue. Thanks, Spuds. Speaking of Nesta, so
I had to get there somewhere.
yeah, no, you did well. You're getting. If I could clap, I would. So Nesta is, when she's not training with Cassie, when he's not fulfilling Nesta, or like when she's whatever, she's working in the library with Clotho. When we met Clotho in Akawar, she is the like head priestess of the library underneath the House of Wind. She also her tongue was cut out because most of the priestesses. So every priestess that's in the library or who work in the library, it's almost like monks. They're there because of something like something traumatic has happened to them. They're sort of abuse. They're abuse survivors. And Clotho was attacked, and her assailants not only cut out her tongue, but they healed it so it can never grow back. And she was that way. She couldn't name them for what they did to her. Her fingers are all smashed up, and Nesta makes a point of that. I think that's why Nesta really likes the librarians, as we talked about from the introduction to this book. She certainly views her going into the cauldron as an assault, and she's she's in an environment full of survivors. And I think that is a good environment for her. And Clotho kind of writes notes to Nesta and gives her instruction on paper to tell her what to do and whatnot.
Wait, but Clotho can't write.
It's magical.
It's magicked.
Yeah.
But she's not allowed to write? Wait, this is a flaw then. Because how can she not write the names of her abusers then, if not through magic?
She chose not to, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
if I remember correctly, she chose not to, but Moore figured it out and she hunted them down anyways.
I'm trying to catch Sarah J. Maas slipping.
No, she covered her butt. She really did. Like, it's hard. It is hard to find Sarah J. Maas not covering her butt. She normally does it. Yeah, I remember that specifically. Clotho refused to write it out, and she also refused to let Rhysand look into her mind to see who it was too.
And you know what I appreciate about Rhysand? I will say this: he was considerate of her not wanting him in her mind and respected that. One of the few things Rhysand respected.
He has a couple brownie points. Like I'm mad at him for a lot. Like I'm being very hard on him in this book. I'm honestly just still mad about the whole threatening to fight Nesta in the first couple chapter. Like, I'm still mad about that, but I'll get over it. And yeah, so she's been working in the library.
This is also where we meet Gwen.
Yeah, it's Gwen. So this is really interesting about Gwen. So if you remember in Mist and Fury, right, Sam? There was a priestess temple that was attacked, and all the priestesses were slaughtered, or most of them were slaughtered, because they wanted the legs of the cauldron. So this was one of the temples that had one of the legs. And Gwen was in that temple when it happened. She's one of those priestesses.
That Asriel saved.
Yeah, the Asriel saved. Ooh, Asriel.
Oh my gosh, you know it's so funny, because Sam and I know the future and all the drama. I love how Carps has no idea.
What do I have no idea about?
Exactly. I just want to pinpoint, star this moment in time and see how she thinks about it after this book.
She's already got opinions.
Oh yeah, I do.
Oh,
I have a reaction for this first section. I just have to edit it together. And then I think after
we also meet Meryl. Meryl is her bitchy boss.
Gwen's bitchy boss, specifically, because
she's also technically kind of Nesta's.
Well, she's one of the priestesses Nesta works with. I get that. But we also, in this same chapter, we meet Emery up in Windhaven on her second or third day of quote-unquote training with Cassian.
And we had met Emery previously when Cassian went to go.
Right. We're making the connection again of Emery from Cassian having met her in Frost and Starlight to then Nesta now meeting her.
Which is interesting because, Nesta seems to have a respect for Emery and Gwen that she does not really have for other people.
I don't know, rereading, it's kind of funny. Like, Gwen and Nesta are a little bit feistier than I had remembered. Like, I know that they become friends, and I think I'm not spoiling anything. I think it's pretty obvious where it's going, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, like, they really kind of butted heads at first. Like, Gwen kind of put her in her place. I didn't realize how spicy Gwen kind of could be.
You know what it is? I think Gwen just kind of like she has the zestiness that Nesta also has. That like that just like throw it back in your face in a playful way. Where like she's zesty, but she's also like not an asshole at the same time.
Yes. There's like almost a blunt honesty to everything she says. Nothing's filtered.
Well, and none of it seems to come from like disrespect or hatred. She's just kind of like, oh yeah, sure.
I made a note that Gwen's kind of like a foil to Moore. Like, if we were, if we were taking this, like, Nesta, like, because now Nesta's the lead heroine in this book versus Feyre being the original lead heroine. I feel like Gwen and Moore are very similar in their sort of directness, but also, like, their spicy behavior as well. I don't think it's different because I feel like Moore is a little sassier, whereas Gwen is definitely more direct.
She's like if Elaine and Moore had a baby.
Yeah. I'd say so. Because I think there's a demureness to Gwen that's very apparent as well. She's got little freckles on her too. Cutie.
My fellow Ginger.
Yeah, I think I forgot how much I like Gwen, and I'm very excited rereading this and getting to know her again. I think I prefer a little bit more than Emery, but who's picking favorites? Not me.
So I think after one of her library shifts, Nessa really wanted a drink.
Oh wait, can we one side note that we should mention in the library? Nesta is getting very claustrophobic the more she goes down, and Bryaxis still isn't back.
Yeah, she's still missing.
Bryaxis is doing Bryaxis right now.
Which, I mean,
Hit it, girl.
I don't think it was part of her bargain with Feyre to return.
It was.
It was, but there wasn't like a time limit, like you have to return by September 8th or something like that.
I think it was implied that she was supposed to come back after the war.
Right.
But after the war could be a year after the war, 2 years after the war,
3 years,
3
after,
years
the
after the war. Semantics.
Potato. Spuddy, sputter. It's fine.
Oh my god. I hate it when she calls me sputters.
I love
so stupid. I don't mind it in private, but in public it's so embarrassing. It already has taken me a lot to explain when people are like, why did she call you spuds? And I'm like, it's a thing.
Do you like potatoes? You're like, no.
No. I hate potatoes.
I know the irony of that.
I really hate potatoes. But you know what? It is funny so my poor dietitian, every time I bring you guys up, she like gets you two confused, and she's like, "Is it Carbs or Sam?" And she's like, "And Carbs is Sarah." she has to have a map for it.
Sarah. Sam's is Swags. One of those two.
people, and it's funny because like when I talk about you guys at work or stuff, when people try to, because I refer to you as Carbs. When people try to like have a conversation with me about it, they're like, you can always tell they pause before they say Carbs' name because they don't know if they're allowed to say that because of just what the word is.
I was trying to get at work. Because I've been telling people at work about the podcast, but I was like, you know what, Davida is a little. Actually, we'll have to bleep out Davida, but my company's a little more stingy about the sort of stuff that we're doing, and I cuss a lot, and we're obviously talking about getting D. So I don't know if it was a good idea for me to tell my work that I do this. So I was like, you know what? I'll just stop telling people my name is Carbs, and I'll go back to Sarah, because I'm Carbs on the show, and they'll be like, ooh, this is a totally different person, even though I sound the same. But I went to a meeting in Denver with our whole legal department. I'm like, there's no way they're going to introduce me as Carbs. That's completely, like, too casual, too inappropriate. So, but in front of, like, 14 attorneys are like, okay, next Carbs is going to talk about our new responsibility.
Oh my God.
No.
Our new initiative for this
So
sourcing
much.
tool. And I'm like, life is over now. Like, I am Carbs. That is who I am.
Oh, that is so funny.
So I came, I'm like, just keep the Carbs. I don't even care anymore.
It's funny though, because like when I call you that, like everyone I can always say when they're like tell when they're about to say your names because they always pause and like give it like a test run, like they'll say it really lightly and then I'll kind of give them a nod and they're like, okay, Carbs.
Yeah.
You guys are so weird. Anyway, what were we talking about? Books.
Yeah, we were talking about Emery. I wanted to get into the fact that after doing all the book work at the library, Nesta decides to go get a drink. So she decides to brave the 10,000 steps. And she gets to 100.
Because she tripped.
Yeah, she tripped. And she's like, nope, going back. And she had to crawl back. And there's Cassie, and she opens the door, like collapses, and there's Cassian just grinning like a fiend. Just like he's like, you know what? I had a shitty day, but this made it worth
This
it.
did it. It is so funny. Like, honestly, if they needed to rehab Nesta, they probably didn't even need to threaten her. They probably just needed to drop her off at the House of Wind and be like, figure it out.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Like, let her do it. Doesn't need to train and work at the library. Just see if she's able to escape.
And then have a Cassian there to be the commentator as she tries to get out.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't have lasted a day.
And one of the times when she's walking down the stairs, so she hasn't really used her power that she's gotten from the cauldron since the war.
Yeah.
And when she trips, she tries to catch herself and like embeds her hand into the stone steps or the stone wall. And she, for a moment, like she's so exhausted and delirious because she's not eating much. She's stressed out. She's malnourished. She's like kind of deteriorating. And she like thinks she sees sparks. And then she realizes that she's left like finger indents into the stone.
Yeah, so her power, it's still there. It is still kicking.
And she talks about how she can feel it like under the surface of her skin. Like she can feel when the magic is going to overflow from her.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of very Cauldron-esque. She is the descriptions of the magic in her and how she's feeling and her own anger and all of her emotions. It's very symbolic to me as you read it.
Wouldn't that be so scary? Like having this power inside of you that you feel just boiling over. Like I think of like when I get angry or something and I feel like my blood temperature go up, thinking about that being uncontrolled and not knowing a thing about it. And it's weird to me that like even through all of this stuff, like they're training her, yes, but no one's really doing a deep dive into what her power actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And they just know that they're all afraid of her because it's like death. But it's like, aren't you kind of worried for Nesta?
I know,
Like,
right?
could that just kill her? Or are you just worried about your image?
I've thought about that too, because even like with Elaine in the third book, this girl's having fucking visions, and you guys are just like sitting there like, should we listen to it? Is she okay? Is her brain scrambled from the cauldron? Like, nobody's questioning it other than, oh, she might be a seer. Next.
Or they utilize it. They're like, oh, she can do this. Like, no one's ever thought, like, hey, not only did they just become Fae, and obviously we know that's really difficult because we saw what just happened to Feyre and getting all these powers, but at least we know where these powers come from. We don't know what the fuck powers Nesta and Elaine have. Like, we know that they're a seer and whatever the fuck Nesta is, death-wise, but, like, they don't have a grasp of what it actually is or does. Like, who's to say that them being a bitch to Nesta won't just make her explode and, like, ruin the whole world out of uncontrolled power?
That's why Nesta was turning to alcohol and sex, because she really didn't understand it. She didn't know how to manage it. And
she probably didn't want to feel it.
Yeah, and when she would feel it boil over like that, she's like, well, I'm gonna drown this shit out. So
Which, like, can you blame her?
No,
Can you
God,
really blame her?
no.
I'd probably be doing the same thing. I'd be like, well, don't like that feeling. Let me go out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Am I the problem? Is this really me? I think I'd rather just become an alcoholic.
Yeah, easy.
Do. But yeah. Oh, and something that's so cute that is happening throughout this whole story, which honestly, this is the friendship goals, is Nesta and the House of Wind. Can we just talk about how endearing that the house is to her?
You know what, though? I have a theory about this, and I am certain I will be right about this.
What is it?
I don't trust it, and I'll tell you why. Because I know that... I know that Sarah J. Maas is a huge Harry Potter fan, and I will give you 2 words: Tom Riddle. That, like, no, this house is getting on her good side. It has never done this stuff before, and Cassian is like, he's like, ooh, that's weird. The house has never responded this way, so it's behaving in a way it's never done before. It's being too nice, and then it's like feeding off of her, or something's gonna happen. It's gonna trick her somehow. I don't know how, but I am certain of it. Like, I don't trust
One
it.
theory that I have,
Yeah, I don't trust it.
that, like, is not necessarily for this book, because this obviously doesn't happen in this book, but I have a theory that when it comes to world crossing, that the house is actually another character embodied in it.
Huh.
And, like, somehow it relates to Nesta because of, like, Nesta's death factor. So I'm wondering if it's a character in another book series of Sarah J. Maas that died and may have, like, come back in this different form. Or maybe
Ooh,
they
it's
didn't actually die, but they were
Lahava!
trapped.
It's Lahava!
Oh my gosh! And that's why she put out the flames for her and she was able to.
I was gonna say Jezebel, but yeah.
It's lava!
It's
You can't tell me
lava!
anything now. Because also, Nesta has a really hard time, we find out in this book, and this, honestly, like, this broke my heart when I found this out, that she cannot be around fires because the cracking sound reminds her so much of her dad's neck breaking, and it is such a trigger for her that she cannot, like, be near a fire if one's around. Like, the sound just eats her alive. And when she's inside the house has a fire going, and she says, no fires. And so the house heats up her room for her. And that's something sweet like lava would do. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well, if the house doesn't...
Saps, all of you.
If the house doesn't screw her over, which I'm certain it will, then I'm gonna assume it's Lahava.
I like the house. I like their little dynamic. And it's even funny because, like, Cassian tries to get Nesta to eat and she just won't. Like, she's got issues, you know, but the house...
Depressing.
Yeah, and the house can get her to eat, and Cassian gets low-key jealous. He's like, ugh. He sees these empty trays outside of Nesta's door, and he's like, okay, so you can get her to eat, but I can't.
Meh. I'm
Meh,
Cassian.
meh, 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 meh. My wingspan's bigger than yours.
Yeah, it is. Hello.
Oh, and we also come to a boiling point, so we'll kind of wrap up this section with... It's so sad.
Yeah.
Nesta and Cassian kind of get into it because Cassian's pushing her and Nesta's just, like, not ready to be pushed right now. And Cassian starts, like, talking about Rhys, and Nesta starts kind of trash talking Rhys for good reason, because he also hasn't been the nicest person to her. And Cassian was like, this is why everybody hates you.
Then, you know, Feyre, liking the metal and all that, she has a talk with Cassian. They're talking about Nesta's progress. He's like, well, she's not training, but she's at least working at the library. And Feyre encourages him to just keep reaching out. So he has an epiphany based on his conversation with Feyre that we already touched on, about how she is too prideful to want to deal with and train as a novice, which is the name of this section, in front of all those Illyrian warriors. So he gets the idea, finally, our great dumb himbo, to train not at Windhaven, but at the House of Wind in the training ground on the roof.
Which makes so much sense, because it's right there.
Instead of that miserable flight, like, the Illyrian mountains are cold, there's just icky men there. Like, I wouldn't want to do it either, Nesta, I get it.
Well, and I mean, she's going through stuff, and now you want to put her through, like, in front of a bunch of judgmental, asshole, masculine men. Like, you really thought that that was a good choice. This girl who's weak and down, not eating, and is going through depression and probably alcohol withdrawals.
Probably.
Yeah.
I don't really know how it works when you're high fae, but I would assume it's somewhat bad.
I don't know. It was all just really sad. And towards the end of chapter 12 is when they talk, and Cassian's like, I didn't actually mean what I said about everyone hating you. And she's like, no, it's true. And like, that it is what it is. But I want you to know that I never hated you.
No. She's practically saying, I love you.
That was a very not Nesta thing to say. And like, I will say, honestly, in that moment, her saying that to Cassian was probably the first time in this book, and maybe even the whole series, not even the whole series, because like she did this during the war, but since all of this shit has gone down and her spiraling, that she showed a sign of, I don't even know what you would call it, but
Compassion.
Yeah, for somebody else. So it was a really sweet moment. And then they go back to sexual tension.
Yeah, which is nice. They also they also make a bargain too. We got little back tattoos on the and it was I think Cassian did a really good job. Like, he wasn't super excited, he wasn't super bossy about training at the House of Wind. He's just like, you know what? More can't take us to Windhaven today, so just for today we're gonna do it here instead. And he's like, you know what, if you finish today's train, like, you know, I'll make a bargain with you. If you finish today's training, I'll owe you a favor. And she's like, anything? He's like, anything. And she's like,
bad choice, Cassian.
Yeah, and she's like, oh, that's a pretty dicey bargain, but she ends up taking it. And it's kind of cool because she's pretty eager to use weapons. And he's like, slow down, shorty. You gotta work on your footwork. So
learn how to breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of it was breathing. She was like so out of breath. He's like, all right, ready? We're gonna go breathe in. 1, 2, 3. We're gonna breathe out. 2, 3. Well, and something that we should mention with the bargain is Nesta. So she would train for an hour, and her side that she receives from Cassian is that she can ask a favor of any magnitude at any time. One favor. And I feel like that was a huge fuck up on Cassian's part. He should know out of everyone. What did Alice say to Pharaoh one time? No matter what you do, don't bargain with a fae.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you like really, really have to.
But I mean, Cassian's our resident himbo, so I mean, are we surprised by this?
He was hoping that it would have something to do with sex. He's like, oh yeah, I'll come give you favors.
The odds of that are high in my favor. Let's go, Ness.
Yeah, let's go.
I think Nessa's smarter than that. She's gonna rake him through the coals somehow. I don't know how, but she's gonna do it.
As she should.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cassian is not gonna be prepared.
No. Oh god, no. Oh god, no. Poor man.
Ready to watch our little himbo become a simp. It'll be great.
I know, Mr. Macho Man is like crawling to her. Anyway, so that was A Court of Silver Flames, chapters 1 through 12. It was a lot of information. Final thoughts. I love this book. It's hard to read.
It's good.
I really liked this book. I think this is my favorite. I can get people really love this book. It's just good. It's just really well written. I really like the characters. I never thought I would be such a Nesta supporter, because I really didn't like her throughout the first 3 books. And
she's not a likable character.
She's not, but you know, seeing what she's going through and just, I don't know, like, I think it's, sorry, Sam, you had read that thing about how Sarah J. Maas was exploring a lot of her own mental health when she wrote this book.
I did. Actually, I was going to ask you if I could read it to you guys.
Yeah, do you mind?
So, at the end of this book, once you get through it, in the acknowledgments, Sarah J. Maas says, but perhaps most important, this book was a companion during my own journey through the valleys and mountains of mental health, traveling alongside me as I faced all the jagged bits inside myself. While Nesta's story is in no way a direct reflection of my own experiences, there were moments in this book that I very much needed to write, not just for the sake of these characters, but for myself. I hope some of those moments resonate and will remind you, dear reader, that you are loved and that you are worthy of love no matter what.
And let me say that we started reading this at the tail end of me moving out of Nashville, and selling a home is outrageously stressful, and even more so when you're doing it on your own with no like partner, whatever. Luckily I didn't have kids, but it was a nightmare to do. And anytime that packing got too overwhelming, the buyers were up my ass about something stupid, I was like, I'm going to take a page out of Nesta's book and I'm going to go for a fucking walk right now. And let me tell you that those walks cleared my head and I got so much done after. There's so much you can pull from this book that can help you in your everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and it's so interesting. So like, I haven't reread it yet, but like I think no matter what point in your life you're at, like there's so much in this book that is just, it's relatable and encouraging in the sense that even when you're watching Nesta at her lowest points, those points resonate so much, whatever experience that you're going through. Like, I will say this again, like I've only cried twice reading a book, and this book was one of them.
I really connected to Nesta's journey, especially in the beginning, because I really struggled with mental health, and my family wanted me to handle it their way instead of showing me, like, giving me the courtesy of letting me like figure it out for myself, and sort of pushing me into different directions. So I really related to Nesta with that, and I really, like, I didn't think I would connect with her so strongly, but I agree. It's just seeing her go through this and seeing her overcome this stuff is very relatable. And I certainly, I don't know, like, it's just kind of nice to have that sort of validation, and this sort of community, I think, to an extent, because I think that's why I love this book and I love book talk, because I think there is a general understanding about, like, how women, I would say especially women, connect to these books and these similar themes that we all go through.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, I related a lot to Nesta's self-loathing, and like when I read this book, I've almost been afraid to pick it back up and read it again. Like, I know that we're talking about it, and I was talking with Sam earlier about whether or not I should reread it, because I know that sometimes when you reread a book, it doesn't have the same effect on you. But when I had first read this book, it was at such a turning point in my life for a hard upward struggle that I was not necessarily prepared for, and it was like exactly what I needed to like read and see and go through and live through the book in the moment, that I think helped me strive towards healing. And I think I've been scared to reread it because I'm like, I hope it still has the same effect in my new healed brain. But we were talking about how, like, even in healing, that it might be good to read because it kind of showcases like what you've already been through.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that reminder of like, I've overcome this terrible stuff.
To show how far you've come, not necessarily like starting at the same point, but so you can actually appreciate your own achievements.
Journey.
Yep.
Yeah. It's just, it was such a good read. So I hope that if you're listening and you haven't read this book yet, or you have feelings because it's about Nesta, it is such a good book, and I hope you pick it up and read it, and I can guarantee that you'll find something in it that resonates with you. So on that sappy note, what are we talking about in the next section, Sam?
We are going to be covering the second part of part 1, because we tried to do all of it in one recording, but an hour and 45 minutes in wasn't going to happen. So we will be covering chapters 13 through 24. We might do a little bit past that. I'm going to double check all of our reading marks, and it might be a little bit past 24. We will see.
On a sad note, but a hopeful note, because this book will get better. Thank you for listening.
Bye. Bye. Bye.